There are 14 teams left playing for the ultimate prize, but the Lombardi Trophy will only be given to one final team. We're going over what winning the Super Bowl will mean for each franchise, starting with the New England Patriots. Just a little over 2 years ago in January, the Patriots parted ways with the greatest coach of all time in Bill Belichick after multiple disappointing seasons in a row. They would then hire his successor in Gerard Mayo, and that season turned out to be a disaster. The Patriots hit rock bottom. Back-to-back 4-13 seasons, no Brady, no Belichick, and people weren't asking when the Patriots would be back, they were asking if they would ever be. Enter Mike Vrabel, a former Patriots linebacker who won 3 Super Bowls with the team. He understood the Patriot way better than anybody. Robert Kraft trusted him, and Vrabel inherited a roster with serious potential. Now in 2025, the Patriots went 14-3. They rattled off a 10-game winning streak, winning 13 of their last 14, won the division, and somehow, in the span of one offseason, they've turned everything around. They spent aggressively. Stephon Diggs on a 3-year deal. Milton Williams became the highest paid player in franchise history, and they rebuilt the offensive line with Morgan Moses and Garrett Bradbury. And they brought back Josh McDaniels to develop their franchise QB. Speaking of their franchise QB, Drake May was a revelation. Through 17 games, he threw for 4,394 yards with 31 touchdowns and just 8 interceptions, leading the league with the 72-yard completion percentage. He was making plays that most guys couldn't even dream of, and is neck and neck with Matt Stafford for the MVP. The Super Bowl victory would be monumental for this franchise. For Vrabel, it would cement his legacy as the coach who restored the Patriots' glory. For May, it would validate him as the franchise quarterback of the future, potentially filling that Tom Brady-sized hole. For Robert Kraft, it would prove the rebuild worked, and the Patriots as a whole would then have more Super Bowls than any other franchise in NFL history. This could be the start of a new dynasty. The Patriots have proven you can rebuild completely in one offseason if you make the right moves. Now, they have the chance to actually complete one of the fastest turnarounds in NFL history and hoist the Lombardi Trophy once again. Speaking of hoisting the Lombardi again, let's go to the reigning Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles. Coming off a dominant 2024 playoff run culminating in a blowout against the Dynasty Chiefs, the Eagles would lose their offensive coordinator Kellen Moore before the start of the 2025 season. Kevin Petulia stepped in as the new OC, and the results have been mixed. The Eagles are 11-6, but they've been inconsistent. They've had stretches where the offense looked unstoppable and other games where they couldn't score in the second half. Despite the ups and downs, Jalen Hurts has continued to prove himself. He's thrown for over 3,200 yards with 25 touchdowns and just 6 interceptions this season. He's already got 6 playoff wins under his belt, more than most quarterbacks will ever see in their entire careers. And then there's Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown. Neither has been absolutely electric. Saquon rushed for over 1,100 yards, but after his 2,000-yard season last year, this was definitely a disappointment. And AJ Brown had just over 1,000 yards and 7 TDs. Neither players have become crucial pieces of Philadelphia's offensive identity, which has been a major source of frustration for everyone involved. Luckily, Vic Fangio and the defense has been one of the most dominant units in the league. The Eagles have now made the playoffs for 5 consecutive seasons under Nick Sirianni. That's no easy feat, even in a weaker division. They've been to the Super Bowl twice in the last 4 years now, losing the first and winning the next against those aforementioned Chiefs. A back-to-back Super Bowl victory would be massive for this franchise. It would make them the first team to repeat as champions since the Chiefs did it in 22 and 23. For Hurts, it would silence any remaining critics and cement his place among the elite quarterbacks of his generation. For Sirianni, it would validate his entire tenure and prove he's built a sustainable winner. The Eagles would solidify their reputation as one of the NFL's modern powerhouses, a team built to win in any era, combining old-school toughness with modern versatility. This is their chance to prove that 2024 wasn't a fluke. This is their chance to build a dynasty. Or they could go the 2021 Rams route, win one and be done. Speaking of the Rams, let's go over what a second Super Bowl would mean for them. The Los Angeles Rams are 12-5 and the 5th seed in the NFC. They've got the best offense in football, leading the league in scoring, and at the center of it all is a 37-year-old Matt Stafford who's having a career year. Stafford led the league in passing with 4,707 yards and passing touchdowns with 46. He's the frontrunner for MVP, and here's the crazy part. He missed training camp because of a back condition. Over the summer, the Rams weren't even sure that their quarterback would be healthy enough to start the season. Now he's potentially about to win MVP and another Super Bowl in the same season. That's rarefied air. That would put Matt Stafford on a short list with some of the all-time greats, along with making him a lock for the Hall of Fame. For Sean McVay, a second Super Bowl would further cement his legacy as one of the best offensive minds in football. He's already led the Rams to 7 playoff appearances in 9 seasons, he's been to 2 Super Bowls, winning 1, and another ring would prove 2021 wasn't a fluke. It would prove he's built a sustainable winner. The Rams have faced the hardest schedule in the league this season. They've battled through injuries, adversity, and close games. If they hadn't suffered the devastating collapse of the Seahawks in Week 16, they'd be the NFC's top seed right now. Stafford is throwing to arguably the best wide receiver core in the league with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. He's got a solid offensive line, and McVay's offensive genius continues to shine. A Super Bowl victory would be the perfect ending to Stafford's incredible comeback story. It would validate everything the Rams have built, and it would prove that even at 37 years old with a bad back, Stafford can still be the best quarterback in football when it matters most. Best QB when it matters most is still a question we still have for the one-seeded Seattle Seahawks and Sam Darnold. After getting rid of Pete Carroll a few seasons ago and signing Mike Macdonald from the Ravens, they've been on an upward trajectory. The Seahawks are 14-3 and the number 1 seed in the NFC. They've got home field advantage throughout the entire playoffs, and at the center of their success is one of the most unlikely comeback stories in recent NFL history, with Sam Darnold. Darnold was a former 3rd overall pick who flamed out with the Jets and the Panthers. He spent time as a backup in San Francisco before the Vikings took a chance on him, and he was great until he wasn't. Then the Seahawks signed him to be their franchise guy, which was a risk at the time. Now he's leading the best team in the conference. This season, Darnold threw for 4,319 yards with 35 touchdowns and just 12 interceptions. He's completing 66% of his passes and has a passer rating of 102.5. Jackson Smith-Njigba has had a historic year as well because of how well Darnold was playing. And for all of that, Mike Macdonald deserves a lot of credit. He brought a defensive mindset from Baltimore and transformed Seattle's identity. The Seahawks defense has been opportunistic all season, forcing turnovers and making big plays in crucial moments. They're on a short list as one of the best defenses in the league. But here's the elephant in the room. Can Sam Darnold win when it matters the most? He's been in this position before. He's never had this kind of success though. We're still wondering if this is real or if it will revert back to his old ways when the pressure ramps up in January. A Super Bowl victory would completely rewrite Darnold's history. He'd go from draft bust to Super Bowl champ. He'd prove that sometimes all a player needs is the right system, the right coaching, and the right opportunity. For the Seahawks, it would be their 2nd Super Bowl in franchise history and their 1st since the Legion of Boom era. It would validate the decision to move on from Pete Carroll and prove that Mike Macdonald is the real deal. This is Sam Darnold's redemption arc. Now he just has to finish it. Speaking of finishing it, we have the San Francisco 49ers. They've had multiple opportunities to get over the hump in the Kyle Shanahan era, but have come up short in both Super Bowls. Nobody expected this season to go how it's gone, but now that they're here, they pose a real threat. Every single linebacker that has made the initial 53-man roster is currently injured. Fred Warner, their defensive leader, is on IR. Nick Bosa is on IR. Tatum Bethune is out for the season with a groin injury. D. Winters, Luke Gifford, Jair Brown, and Kalia Davis are all dealing with injuries heading into the playoffs. On offense, Trenton Williams missed time with a hamstring injury. Ricky Pearsall dealt with knee and ankle issues. Nobody knows where Brandon Ayuk is. George Kittle was also out for some time during the season, like he typically is, and Christian McCaffrey has battled through injuries all season long. This team has been held together by duct tape and sheer willpower, and somehow they're still here. For Kyle Shanahan, a Super Bowl victory would silence the critics who have called him a choker. He's been to 2 Super Bowls and lost both in devastating fashion to the Chiefs, also being the OC for the 28-3 collapse with Atlanta. A ring would change everything. It would cement Shanahan as one of the greatest offensive minds in NFL history and prove he can win when it matters the most. For Brock Purdy, this would be his defining moment. He's thrown for 2,167 yards with 20 touchdowns and 10 interceptions this season. He's got a 7-2 record as a starter, but critics still question whether he's a system quarterback or a legitimate franchise guy since Mac Jones was able to step in and win some games, and also because he got injured right after signing that massive contract. Winning a Super Bowl would validate Purdy as the real deal. Mr. Irrelevant becoming a Super Bowl champion? That would be a story for the ages. For this franchise, it would be their 6th Super Bowl, tying them with the Patriots and Steelers for the most in NFL history. Despite all the injuries and all the adversity, they would prove that they have championship DNA running deep in San Francisco. And speaking of championship DNA running through the franchise, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 10-7 and made the playoffs as a wild card, just winning a stunner against the Baltimore Ravens, forcing them to fire their head coach of 18 years, John Harbaugh. And at the helm of it all is 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who's on a mission to add one more ring to his legacy. Rodgers threw for 3,322 yards with 24 touchdowns and just 7 interceptions this season. He's completing 65% of his passes. After spending 2 disappointing years with the Jets, he signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the offseason, and it's been a perfect fit. For Rodgers, this is about cementing his place in the GOAT conversation. He's already got 4 MVP awards and 1 Super Bowl ring from his time in Green Bay. A second ring, especially at 42 years old, would firmly put him in the top 5 QBs of all time. It would prove he can still win at the highest level even in the twilight of his career. For Mike Tomlin, this would be his 2nd Super Bowl as head coach. He's faced criticism for not being able to win a playoff game, let alone get over the hump in recent years. The Super Bowl victory would silence those critics once and for all, and it would prove that Tomlin is still one of the elite coaches in the NFL, and that his winning formula is unstoppable when it matters most. For the Steelers, this would be their 7th Super Bowl, the most in NFL history. They're tied with the Patriots at 6 right now, and adding that 7th would further cement Pittsburgh as the gold standard of NFL excellence. Now they have a chance to complete one of the most improbable playoff runs in recent memory. Speaking of improbable runs, that'd be the same for the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are 8-9 and made the playoffs with a losing record. They're only the 5th team since the 1982 strike-shortened season to make the postseason under 500. But here's the thing, history isn't against them. Of the 4 previous teams to make the playoffs with losing records, 2 of them won in the first round, and both of those teams very familiar to people in Carolina. The 2010 Seahawks went 7-9 and beat the 11-5 Saints in the Beastquake game. Dave Canales was on the Seahawks staff. The 2014 Panthers went 7-8-1 and beat the 11-5 Cardinals in the wildcard round. They proved that once you're in the playoffs, your record doesn't matter anymore. For Bryce Young, this is his chance to rewrite the narrative. After a rocky rookie season where he threw for 2,800 yards and 11 TDs with 10 interceptions, he has been not as bad since, though that doesn't mean he's been good. He threw for 3,000 yards with 23 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, completing under 64% of his passes this season. A Super Bowl victory would be monumental for this franchise, their first championship ever, and for Young, it would validate him as a franchise quarterback and silence all the doubters who questioned whether he was a bust, including myself. For Dave Canales, it would set his legacy as the coach who turned everything around in just his second season. The Panthers have nothing to apologize for. They're in the playoffs, and now the mentality shifts. It's 1-0 with the chance to win their first world championship. And speaking of first, we have the Jacksonville Jags potentially on their way to winning their first championship as well. An absolutely crazy turnaround based off the last few seasons. Liam Cohen came in and did an amazing job. The Jags are 13-4 and won the AFC South. Just last season, they were 4-13. Now they're one of the best teams in football, and this is one of the fastest turnarounds in NFL history. Liam Cohen is making history. He's the only first-year head coach in NFL history to win 12-plus games after taking over a team that had 4 or fewer wins in the prior season. He's the 7th NFL coach of all time to win 13 or more games in his first season. The man came in and completely transformed this franchise in one offseason. Trevor Lawrence has been absolutely electric. He threw for 4,007 yards with 29 passing TDs and just 12 interceptions this season. He also rushed for 9 touchdowns on the ground, giving him a total of 38, breaking the Jags single-season record. In the Trevor Lawrence era, the Jags have finished above 500 in 3 of 5 seasons, winning the AFC South twice. In the 20 years before him, they finished above 500 3 times and won the division just once. Lawrence has quietly brought the Jags to a sense of relevancy not seen since the 90s. The prince who was promised is now the king of Duval. A Super Bowl victory would be monumental for this franchise, their first ever championship. For Cohen, it would be great for his legacy, cementing him as one of the brightest coaching minds in football. For Lawrence, it would validate him as an elite quarterback and prove he's that franchise cornerstone they always believed he could be, living up to that first overall billing. This could be Jacksonville's time, and the same could be said for their division rival, Texans. The Houston Texans are 12-5 and have made the playoffs for the 3rd consecutive year under head coach DeMeco Ryans. This is the first time in franchise history they've had 3 straight 10-plus win seasons. DeMeco Ryans has been nothing short of remarkable. He's 32-19 with a 2-2 playoff record. He's the first Texans head coach to ever have 3-plus 10-win seasons. Gary Kubiak had 2, Bill O'Brien had 2, but Ryans has 3. For a franchise that started 0-3 back in 2018 and made the playoffs, they've now done it again in 2025. They're only the 5th team since 1990 to make the postseason after starting 0-3. The Texans have proven they know how to overcome adversity. CJ Stroud has been a factor. In his 3rd season, he threw for over 3,000 yards with 19 touchdowns, completing 65% of his passes. He's got 28 wins in 46 career games. He's already been to the playoffs 3 times now in 3 years. Stroud is building something special in Houston. He's got 62 career touchdown passes and a 93.5 passer rating. The kid is only 24 years old and already looking like a franchise cornerstone. But the defense is really the story. They've allowed the least amount of yards in the league and the second least amount of points. They're fast, physical, and intimidating. A Super Bowl victory would be monumental for this franchise since it would be their first. For DeMeco Ryans, he'd be a lock as one of the elite young coaches in the NFL. For Stroud, it would prove he's one of the best quarterbacks of the 2020s. The Texans have gone from irrelevant to contenders in just 3 years. Now they have a chance to complete one of the most impressive rebuilds in NFL history and hoist the Lombardi for the first time. It would also be a first for the Chargers as well. The Los Angeles Chargers are 11-6 and back in the playoffs with Jim Harbaugh at the helm. And if there's anyone who knows how to win championships, it's Harbaugh. Harbaugh won the national championship with Michigan in 2023 before making the jump back to the NFL. The Super Bowl victory would make him one of the rarest coaches in NFL history, winning a championship at both the college and professional levels. He'd be made as one of the greatest football minds of all time. For Justin Herbert, this is his moment. He's 27 years old and in his 6th season. He just threw for 3,727 yards and 26 touchdowns this season. Over his career, he's got 24,820 passing yards and 163 touchdowns. But here's the problem. Herbert has been labeled as Mr. If Man, the talented quarterback who puts up great stats but can't win when it matters the most. His playoff record is brutal. In his first 2 career playoff games, he blew a 27-0 lead to lose 31-30, and then threw 4 interceptions for a 40.9 passer rating in his second game. He's 0-2 in the playoffs, but the criticism hasn't been relentless enough, to be honest. It's been mostly excuse making. But a Super Bowl victory would justify the Herbert hype narrative. He'd go from potential playoff choker to Super Bowl champion, and he'd silence every single critic who ever questioned whether he's a winner. For the Chargers franchise, this would be their first Super Bowl victory in history. They've been to the Super Bowl once in 1994 and got blown out by the 49ers. They've had heartbreak after heartbreak in the playoffs, especially against the Patriots, who are 3-1 against them all time in the postseason. This is Herbert's chance to prove he's not just talented, but a champion. This is also Sean Payton's time to prove that he's a winner again. The Denver Broncos are 14-3 and the number 1 seed in the AFC. They've got home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and nobody saw this coming. Just 2 years ago, the Broncos were a disaster. They went 8-9 in Payton's first year and 5-12 the year before that. They were stuck with Russell Wilson's massive contract. The franchise was in complete disarray. Then they would cut Russell Wilson and draft Bo Nix. Now they're 14-3, they've tied a franchise record with 14 wins, something they've only done once before back in 1998 when they won the Super Bowl. Bo Nix has been pretty solid this year. He threw for 3,931 yards with 25 touchdowns and 11 interceptions, completing 63% of his passes. He's won 24 games in his first 2 seasons, tying Russell Wilson for the most by any NFL quarterback in their first 2 years. But here's the thing, the Broncos offense hasn't been playing very well lately. They barely escaped the Chiefs 20-13 with an injured Patrick Mahomes watching from the luxury suite. Sean Payton needs to scheme up some offense for the playoffs, and critics are questioning whether this team can actually win when it matters the most. For Nix, a Super Bowl victory would do wonders for his legacy. For Payton, it would prove that he can still win without Drew Brees. It would cement his legacy as one of the greatest coaches of all time. And for Matt LaFleur, he really needs a Super Bowl win. The Green Bay Packers are 9-7-1 and barely squeaked into the playoffs as a wild card. This season has been a roller coaster of adversity and disappointment, but somehow they're still alive. Matt LaFleur has been on the hot seat all season long. After 6 straight playoff appearances and multiple NFC Championship games, the expectations in Green Bay are sky high, even if Rodgers isn't there anymore. But this year felt different. The team struggled with consistency. They had injuries, they had close losses, and people were questioning whether LaFleur had lost his touch. A Super Bowl victory would completely flip the narrative. LaFleur would go from on the hot seat to a champion. He'd silence every critic who questioned his play calling and his ability to win the big one. It would place him as one of the elite head coaches in the NFL. Jordan Love has been solid all season, throwing for 3,381 yards and 23 touchdowns with just 6 interceptions, which is insane for Jordan Love. He's completing 66% of his passes with a 101.2 passer rating. But the biggest story for the Packers has been the devastating injury to Micah Parsons. Parsons tore his ACL in Week 15 against the Broncos, and an MRI confirmed the worst-case scenario. The star pass rusher, who had 12.5 sacks and 26 QB hits this season, was done for the year. After trading a massive haul for him during the offseason and the defense being elite during the first 15 weeks, this came as a brutal blow. For Love, though, a win would validate him as a franchise quarterback and prove he's not just Aaron Rodgers' replacement, he's his own man. For the Packers, it would be their 5th Super Bowl and prove that even in a down year, they know how to win when it matters the most. And speaking of an NFC North team, we have another one in the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are 11-6 and the number 2 seed in the NFC. They've made the playoffs for the first time since 2020, and after decades of disappointment, the franchise finally has hope again. Just last year, the Bears were 5-12 and fired Matt Eberflus mid-season after the Thanksgiving debacle. Caleb Williams was a rookie struggling through a 10-game losing streak, and people questioned whether he was a bust. They questioned whether Chicago would ever be relevant again. Now it's year 2. The Bears are 11-6 and they rattled off a 5-game winning streak, and somehow everything has changed. And that's because of Ben Johnson. the former Lions offensive coordinator who turned down multiple head coaching jobs to wait for the right opportunity. He chose Chicago because of Caleb Williams. He saw the potential, he saw the talent, and he's been coaching him hard ever since. Johnson's tough-love approach has transformed Williams. In year 2, Caleb threw for 3,942 yards with 27 touchdowns and just 7 interceptions, setting a franchise record for passing yards. He's got 6 game-winning drives this season. The Bears have 6 wins when trailing in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, the most by any team in a season since the 1970 merger. Caleb has proven he's not fragile. He's proven he can handle the pressure, and Johnson has proven he's the right coach to develop him. A Super Bowl victory would be monumental for the franchise, their first championship since 1985. For Williams, it would place him as a franchise QB and silence every critic who really ever doubted him. For Johnson, it would validate his decision to come to Chicago and prove he's one of the elite coaches in the NFL. Lastly, we have Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have the most pressure riding on them. This has to be his time. After having so many devastating losses in every playoff tenure of his career, Josh Allen has to come through. The Buffalo Bills are 12-5 and finally have a legitimate shot at their first Super Bowl in franchise history. For a team known for their infamous 4 straight Super Bowl losses back in the 90s, those scars still haven't healed, and Patrick Mahomes is the reason. But a championship this season would help those scars fade. For Josh Allen specifically, this could be the momentum that propels him from one of the elite talents of the NFL to one of the legends of the NFL. His dual threat ability has carried the Bills through tough matchups. Allen just won MVP last season, and in this season he threw for 3,668 yards with 25 TDs, completing 69% of his passes, but people still question his supporting cast, even with James Cook being the rushing title holder. They question whether he can win when it matters most. They're not at the top of their division for the first time in half a decade. Head coach Sean McDermott has been criticized for his conservative play calling and past playoff exits, but this season he's embraced a more aggressive approach. If Buffalo can finally get over the hump, they'd be one step closer to rewriting their franchise's legacy. A Super Bowl win would be more than just a championship. It would be an emotional cleansing of decades worth of heartbreak. This is Josh Allen's time to silence the doubters once and for all. And so there you have it, what a Super Bowl means for each playoff team. Thanks for watching, like the video, and subscribe if you're new.